This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Wednesday, a wild Wednesday at that, February 5th, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host along with my son Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, except tonight I'm flying solo. Folks, you're about to hear an incredible 3-hour program. Tonight, our very special guest is Mr. Jim Garrow. And I like to say that you're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines of bylines, bring you the news behind the news. And for the new listeners, and we have many, we've heard from many today and this past week. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base is on the Internet, HomelandSecurityUS.com. Yes, you heard that correctly, HomelandSecurityUS.com, not affiliated with any government agency. We're also simulcast by the good graces of the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us and thank you for your belief, your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of events, current events together. I got to tell you a little bit, boy, you know, it's amazing when you don't know how to work the buttons, the studio equipment, or you're not that good at it. It's amazing what happens right before the show, and you think you know it and you don't, and then lights go on and off, and things kind of go sideways, and you're left with trying to figure out what to do next. Troy, I apologize for not grabbing you when I needed to. Hopefully we're connected. Portions of tonight's broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, are brought to you by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of premium digital spoken audio information and entertainment on the Internet. Folks, have you taken advantage of this yet? If you haven't, do so. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the Audible.com icon. Click on that, and what happens is this. You'll be entitled to a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial today by signing up at audibletrial.com/CFP Radio. And CFP Radio, that's us. We get credit for the sign-up. But I'll tell you what, it's a great service. You can listen to your favorite books, and it's just a fantastic service when you don't have time to read or you can't read a book. That's a fantastic service. Now, with that, let's welcome, I'm going to bring right on Mr. Jim Garrow. Mr. Garrow, how are you, sir? Did I lose Mr. Garrow? Anything is possible. Can I, in fact... okay, let me just double-check this. What have I done? Oh, go ahead and laugh. Go ahead and laugh. Can you... okay, there we go. So at least the audio is going out over there. All righty then. Well, now, perhaps I can... Troy, are you with me? This is the Christians United Broadcasting Network with me. All right, I'm showing. Let's see here. Oh, that's mute. There we go. Jim, I guess I had to press that red button.
Sometimes
are you there?
Just have to be, in advance.
I am so sorry, my friend. I was looking all around here. I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong? So this is, look, folks, I'm not a professional radio talk show host. You can tell that, or certainly not an engineer. But hey, live with it, I guess. Jim, it's been exactly 1 month and 4 days since we had you on. You were on the first show of the year on our broadcast. First of all, how you been?
Well, I'm doing well. I have a new security team, as you probably are aware. Since the last ones let me down and allowed someone to play with my vehicle. But as I won't say luck, as fate would have it, God intervened by causing the temperature to drop, and the machinations, the plans of the bad guys didn't work out. So I'm still here. I'm smiling. I'm not driving that car, by the way. That's done for me, so I have to get a new one.
Oh, my. And for those who don't know, folks, if you haven't heard, it was what? I think it was like 3 or 4 days after the program. It was, you were on the 1st, and I think this happened on the 4th or 5th, that your car, someone tampered with your car, and had it been successful, you would have probably not be talking to me right now or talking to anyone right now. And of course, you turned the car over to the RCMP for their forensic evaluation. Certainly, it came back as a pretty pro job there. Is that an accurate assessment?
Well, the funny thing is when the police called me and said, we're looking at your car right now in the garage. I'd left it down at a local garage and asked them to have a look at it and asked the police to go and have a look too. And they're aware that, I have a little bit of a past. And yeah, they went and had a look and said, wow, do you mind if we film this? Because they're very interested in the fact that this was a very, very professional job. And they showed me where there were 8 different interventions in my vehicle that would have worked together to cause me to do an end-over-end flip. Now, if you can believe it, you've seen people go sideways, rolling sideways, but this would have been like an end-over-end at speed, and it would have probably killed me. But, they said it was a pro job. They were quite the admirers of this wonderful professional job.
Wow. Well, we're certainly glad you're safe and you're okay, and it was really fate that intervened. You were able. It's my understanding, and forgive me if we're going over this, but it was my understanding that you were able to tell as you were entering the interstate, as we call them here.
There was a funny noise. There was a really strange noise, and we've gone over that. Anytime you hear a weird noise, you pull over immediately. Sure enough, it was the right thing to do, and our guys had it towed immediately. They had one of those flatbeds come along and pick it up, and I went. What's the funny thing here is that I got a call from someone I did not know, who talked about being kind of a fan, or at least a supporter, and he just wanted to meet me and chat with me, and that was and it happened to fit my schedule, and the guy was going to buy me lunch, and so I proceeded to drive down to the highway and to go over, just a few stops over and meet with this fella. Well, the guy was there actually when I arrived, and he was a little shocked. I could see that he was surprised. Maybe he was surprised at how I look because, now I look like one of the Dynasty guys. But anyway, I made that meet. Who knows? That could have been the very man who was trying to do me in, but who knows? Wow. Well, hopefully, Jim, your security team will be present and there to protect you any further attempts. We can't lose any more people. I feel like we've lost a lot of people. And I noticed something today too. Steve Quayle had sent me an email about bankers that seem to be dropping like flies as well. There seems to be international bankers here and in Japan and elsewhere. There's so many things going on. Well, let's just pull up a chair here at the old kitchen table and grab yourself a drink here, and I'll do the same. And let's just talk. Let's talk about what's really going on out there. What we should. I'm kind of interested in your take on what we should be looking at right now. The areas of concern that we should. The areas that we should be looking at, or what's taking place right now. Where do you want to start, Jim? Well, there's so many things that are going askew, and of course askew to us as we observe, the world around us or the world we're in direct contact with. But I'm certain that it's a plan on the part of others to bring down, for example, the banking system. That's one thing. The government and law and order in the United States generally, that's another thing. Look at what's going on with Europe, and of course we're looking at the bankers there taking high dives off high buildings. And of course, this is a repetition of what was going on when the junk bond market failed. If you remember, there were loads of people, stepping in front of subway trains and all sorts of things because they were then caught with no coverage, and they bet the wrong way. And of course, they lost everything, and probably, up to billions of dollars of other people's money as well. And remember the unfortunate maneuver with was it the Bank of Scotland, where the one trader ended up almost bringing the entire bank down. Do you remember that? Yes. Now, but we're seeing this. We're seeing a replay of all of that and more, I suppose.
But no, you referenced the Bank of Scotland and the one trader. How would that fit into perhaps a template of today?
Well, we're supposed to have rigorous mechanisms in place so that you can't have somebody go rogue and make irresponsible maneuvers with respect to government-secured money or even stock market speculative funds. There are limits that are placed on those sorts of things. But as you know, we've entered into this odd period of time, courtesy of Mr. Obama and his administration, where so much lawlessness is going on from him and those people in their government that it's setting up a very poor example for anyone in a position of responsibility across America, and in fact Europe too, or any countries that deal directly through trade, where again there are agreements and there are penalties and there's all systems that are meant to safeguard us. Well, we're into that odd period of time where our president has himself basically said to the world, I can do whatever I want with the law and break it at any point in time. The problem is people look at that, and for them it's like a bellwether signal that this is allowable for almost anyone if you can get away with it. That's a sad day.
Indeed it is. Ladies and gentlemen, for those joining us late, we're talking our very special guest. Of course, I'm flying solo. What am I using the we pronoun for? I'm talking with Jim Garrow. He operated as an intelligence operative for the CIA. He publicly stated that he'd been recruited at the age of 18, of course, on our program here on the first of the year. He's operated throughout the world and has resided here in the United States, Canada, China. In China, Mr. Garrow founded the Bethune Institute Pink Pagoda Schools. He's worked as an intelligence operative until he was unceremoniously let go as an intelligence asset when his cover was deliberately blown by Barack Hussein Obama on October 3rd, 2013. Interesting. So those joining us late, we're talking with Mr. Garrow. Yeah, it seems like we've got Obama that's really taking us down. Obviously, that's kind of a no-brainer. But what do you see happening first here? I mean, we got. I look at the news, and frankly, Jim, I'm overwhelmed. I mean, you got toothpaste bombs, Sochi flights about toothpaste bombs. You got the economy and globally tanking. You got this Affordable Care Act that's essentially turning our economy into mush, along with the banks. I mean, you name it. We've got this end of privacy, the expansion of the police state. I mean, my gosh.
Uncle Adolf would be pleased with what he was seeing if he was looking down from or up from wherever he is at what Barack Obama is doing. Because a tyrant, one thing they like about each other, and it's one of the reasons tyrants seem to get together and meet. Castro met with Ceausescu of Romania. I'm not even sure if I said that right, but anyway, he's been long gone off the scene. But they'd go to visit Moscow and they'd chat it up and they'd have a great time together. But they admired one another with respect to how far these people would go in taking control and wresting control of the country, the entire nation, and every service within it. And of course, you see the police services now becoming, instead of neighborhood policing, we now have a militarized policing with Fed money coming in to hand over, weapons that look like they're going to be in Afghanistan, and secure vehicles that look as though they're ready to go over mines and survive the explosion. And those, of course, will be in your local neighborhood, protecting you somehow. Anyway, that's the road we're down.
Well, let's talk about the what the heck are they preparing for? I mean, we hear stories, of course. We hear lots of stories that the ammunition purchases. We know that they purchased hollow points, the MRAPs. They know that we know they're federalizing the municipal and local police forces in exchange for federal money. all this is taking place today, or here within the last 24 hours. The United States Postal Service just announced that they announced a very huge ammunition purchase. I mean, on January 31st is when the purchasing office posted a notice for the ammunition. I mean, Jim, what are they getting ready for? I mean, what are your sources?
Wait a minute. They need that ammunition because they're becoming a bank.
Okay. Well, I get that. But obviously, this is unprecedented. I mean, what are they expecting? I mean, because we can go. Certainly we can talk about the civil unrest, the banks closing. Yeah, I mean, but what are your sources telling you, or your sources?
Yeah, the bottom line is
go ahead.
Inordinate government control over every aspect of our lives. The warning there, and I made a joke about it, and we had a little bit of a laugh, but the fact that the post office, which is a service within every community, and of course you have many different post offices around, and many of them are actually almost like franchises, where they represent the postal service, but they're really paying fees in order to be able to act as a local post office or a branch post office off a main one. But what we're now watching is, okay, the government has now managed to get whole sectors of society dependent on government, and they keep them. It's like keeping slaves on the plantation. And in that, they are now expanding it so that they can get more and more people who are marginal. If they're not on welfare, for example, or if they're not on social assistance of one sort or another, now it can be the people who would normally go to loan sharks, or the people who would go and have to pay inordinate amounts of money and interest because they're not good credit risks. You know, as you see this thing kind of forming, what we're seeing is that members of society who are marginally making it are now going to have to go and borrow money from the government because the government's going to make it available to them. And for those people who've got huge, for example, credit card debts, they can now go to the government and get a limited amount of money. I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop where they tell us that, you know, now you can go in and the government will secure you. You won't have to post assets. You won't have to have these assets attached, to in case the loan isn't repaid. The government will guarantee it, and it's only fair. After all, we're taking, now we're redistributing the funds that would normally be available to those with good credit ratings. Well, it won't matter if you don't have a good credit rating because the government will back it up. So you watch and see, and I'll bet you they come out with a first limit of $25,000. That's my prediction. $25,000. People will flood in looking for this, 2% interest rate. Okay, I'm telling you two things that I've been hearing about. This lower interest rate that's going to beat the bank's interest rate, the government securing the loan, nothing attached by way of assets to secure it at all, just the government, its signature. And then, of course, you will have an outstanding limit because it's not a limit you would normally, if you have a bad credit rating, you wouldn't be granted this.
But how would that work, Jim? And I'm trying to work this through in my mind. How would that work in an economy, in a failed economy, one that, as our government stands right now, or are you talking about something like after a reset?
No, I'm talking about something that's going to be made available now. And again, what it's going to do is take people who are in desperate straits and are not able to access government intervention. Now the government's going to be their best friend. Do you see what's happening?
Yeah, I see that. But wouldn't that call, or and again, I'm trying to work this out. Wouldn't that necessitate the creation of more money, which I know is not a problem for the Fed, but wouldn't that expand the government's debt if they do that, or would this be a transfer of some kind?
Well, think about it. Do they care? They don't care. What they're looking for, more loyalty, more voters who are going to vote Democratic, because look at Look who came to your rescue. Go in and show them that you have, $30,000 worth of credit card debt. You can't possibly pay it. You're paying 20, whatever the maximum is. I think it's 23% or whatever that they can, squeeze you for. Now you can go in, and the government's going to be your best friend.
Oh,
Mr.
man.
Obama took care of you. And by the way, he took that from the richest 1%, who, after all, aren't paying enough tax.
So, okay. So this is going to be the first national bank of Obama, and not really the first national bank of, we'll say, the federal government, because it sounds to me like this will be a executive administrative decision process, right? Well,
it'll be within the post office, which again is a protected federal entity. So we have a new banking industry from the government that will compete head-to-head against the credit card companies. And let's face it, the profit center for many banks at that high interest rate. Those credit card companies, Visa, MasterCard, whoever, American Express, Diners, if they're still around, these guys are the ones making a pretty hefty profit on the backs of the poor working class person. This is about class warfare. That's another part of this effort.
Right. And I had a source, a DHS source, tell me, a year and a half now ago, or roughly that length of time, very close to 2 years, where the intent of Obama and his people, the people around him, is to create this societal warfare, this class warfare. And, of course, for the purposes of cracking down and handling the people like sheep, herding the people like sheep, and, of course, the expansion of the tyrannical powers. So this does fit. And it would be an interesting move with the post offices, the United States post offices. It seems like it would fit.
It would, and think about the enforcement arm here. This is where DHS comes in. They will now become the enforcers of the bank, of the post office.
Oh, okay. So then you've got your built-in army. You've got your built-in security force. Now, what happens, Jim, if someone, in this process of which you speak, what happens if someone defaults?
Well, isn't that going to be an interesting play? I'm wondering if because you may have a house, you may have assets that they'll attach, they'll grab it. I'm sure that'll happen.
Would they put you on the street, or would they give you other accommodations?
They'll put you in housing.
Okay.
I wonder, do you know anywhere where there might be camps ready for people who default on loans from the government?
Oh man, yeah. I can see this. I can see this coming through. Oh my gosh. Well, this is something I really didn't consider in that fashion. I suppose. Now,
you were in good thoughts that Mr. Obama would actually do something that would be just to the benefit of the people, we the people, because he's such a warm, cuddly, loving person.
No, I guess I wasn't thinking that level of evil at this point, but I understand it now, which is pretty frightening. What kind of timeline could we be looking at for something like this to take shape? And I guess it really wouldn't be that big of a deal to do, would it?
No. Well, it actually will be a big deal because you'll have to have a place for people to go in, and actually an office where you can go in and meet, very much like a bank. So we may find that there'll be new offices opening up that will be part of the post office. What if we call it the Post Office Credit Union?
Interesting.
Or the Post Credit Society.
Oh, wow.
Starting to seem pretty socialist, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting how Senator Warren, who I've been hearing a lot of things about for some sort of presidential bid in 2016, kind of fits into all of this Any thoughts on Senator Warren specifically, or in general, or?
Well, I'm sure there'll be a board. There'll be a board of directors. I'm going to predict that the former. I'll just throw this name out. I'll probably jinx the guy. This will probably destroy his chances because I've actually spoken his name in public. But do you remember the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey when the Twin Towers went down? You knew that it was the Twin Towers, of course, were owned by the Port Authority. The chairman at the time was George Marland. Do you know that name?
I've heard it, but no, I can't say that I do. George Marlin, like the fish marlin?
Yes, George Marlin.
Okay. Okay.
And big tall guy, about 6'5". I've sat across the table from him in the past a number of times. But you will find that they will stack the boards, the governing board, the advisory boards. They'll stack local. Very much like a credit union where you become a member. It's very much a socialist enterprise that's coming down the tubes to us, and all of it, once again, to control people and have a superordinate ability to close on their assets, and it'll be the government. Yeah, we're talking Snidely Whiplash with a Stars and Stripes flag in hand.
Man, how incredibly devious this all is. Some people have written to me, and some people have said that Obama is on a time schedule, that he's got a schedule that he's really beholden to. Now, are all of these things that are to take place, the takedown of this country, and I know that's on the agenda here, to neuter our military, to take down our country. Is this all to happen under his watch, based on your information?
Yes, it is, and you're right. There is a time frame. The neat thing is that so many patriots who have been in positions of having information available to them, and they, of course, have leaked that information or put it out for the public, and the public reaction to it has caused Mr. Obama to have to change his schedule and advance things further and quicker than he was actually hoping. And to a degree, it's caused mistakes to be made, errors to be made that help to safeguard us, believe it or not. In their foolishness, the government has tripped over itself in a number of issues. But, specifically on this one, this whole new banking effort on the part of government through the post office, administered, of course, by the thugs in DHS, we're about to see something that, and by the way, I don't think anyone yet has said this on the open airwaves. I don't think anyone has said this. So this is actually being broken out right now on your show, as far as I know.
Fantastic. Yeah, I really haven't considered it. I mean, I not in the context in which you have painted it, I suppose. I'm trying to find the right words because this really, if you think about it, what a intensely devious thing this is. Man, and you talk about creating this. Well, it's even more than a dependent class. It would be it's everyone's all in, aren't they? Now,
they really are. Well, wait until we have the government credit card.
Okay.
Instead of or MasterCard, you will have your U.S. government credit card that fits within whatever they title this. If they call it the credit union, or if they call it the society, however they're going to term it, and those terms are being kicked around. And the logo. Oh, wait until the logo comes out. That's the other thing. We just love the Obama logo, the O. Well, wait until you see where he takes the logo for this new communist effort at banking and financing. This will be something else. This will be a shocker. But it won't be a shocker because people are getting used to the fact of what this man, the audacity of this guy, the commie in the White House.
Well, besides Obama and of course Jarrett, who else do we need to be watching for? I mean, I've looked at so many people that are associated with Obama himself. You know, who else do you have your eyes on that may have their fingers on the planning board?
Well, we have never taken our eyes off Van Jones. You know, he made his commie statements that was an embarrassment. He was caught. Of course, he was shifted off to the side. Well, he was appointed to a number of different boards. So money-wise, he's being well taken care of. The other one's David Axelrod, and there's one of the most vicious of the long-term buddies of Obama from back in the Chicago days. Between Valerie Jarrett and David Axelrod, you had the thug team. They were the gang that backed him up. They were the gang that did the dirty work, gathered the information, got the private investigators to, searching, the garbage of people to get the goods on them that would be used to make sure that they were either silenced or moved aside so that Mr. Obama could be successful. And, of course, that has continued on, where we've now had over 5 years of information gathering. And now, of course, you've got the government agencies, and you've got 400 people in the West Wing whose job alone is to gather information from all sorts of levels and play. But the scariest is that they have the finger on the pulse of every single member of the House, the Senate, the governor's mansions, and the Senates, the state Senates. It's a new era. Information is king, but they've known that, and let's keep a close eye. We already know about Valerie Jarrett, Mrs. President, who runs the country when he's not here, when he's out, vacationing or touring or golfing, the important things that he does. But keep in mind, Van Jones, there's a vicious commie right there, and David Axelrod. Keep your eye on those two.
Okay. Axelrod, I absolutely. Van Jones, I thought he was maybe one step removed from the operational aspect of this Obama regime, but what you're saying is he's still involved and has some potential here.
Still meeting in the White House.
Well,
he's over there.
Yes. I really wasn't aware in terms of Van Jones what his is to me looking at this regime. It seems a little bit cloudy. I mean, there are people around him. You've got the various cabinet positions. You've got various people coming in and out. You've got the Muslim Brotherhood, of course, infiltrated in the White House. And by the way, what about that? What about the Muslim Brotherhood in the White House?
I would like to get a hold of the actual documents that have been passed from the Muslim Brotherhood to Mr. Obama and track the people who are now going to be appointed to boards based on the recommendation of the Muslim Brotherhood. Boards, directorships, foundation heads or boards of directors, government agencies. They are now replete with Muslims, replete with Marxists. But now you've got direct contact between the president himself and leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. Of course, with his half-brother, Malik, being a bundler. Of course, that's just rocketed Malik, of course, to stardom in the Muslim world and with the Muslim Brotherhood. And, of course, for Malik to say it would be great if you could meet this leader in the White House, it'll send a real positive signal across the Islamic world about the standing of the Muslim Brotherhood. Or if you want to really get down to it, put the fear into anyone who's daring to stand up to the Muslim Brotherhood, because after all, they're now buddies with the President of the United States.
Well, and of course, we've seen the photographs where Obama's half-brother Malik photographed wearing Hamas, the Hamas garb, a scarf that proclaims "Jerusalem is ours, we are coming." And of course, folks, the U.S. State Department officially designated Hamas a terrorist organization back in October of '97. So this is incredible. And, this whole thing is, it speaks to me. I'm looking at this and I see this highly orchestrated placement, this very highly structured placement of Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, Sabarka, whatever you want to call him, into the White House. And it seems as if he was groomed for this very moment in time. Now, having said that, I'm looking at him, and the more I look at him, and the more books I read, and the more research I do, Jim, I got to tell you, man, everything to me points back to some sort of CIA type of operative, where his parents, from his alleged parents to him, an artifact of the CIA, or a product, I should say, of the CIA. Is that is that a fair, accurate statement?
Well, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Have you had any of your well-sourced contacts actually say it, that he is, in fact, has in the past been a CIA agent? Have you ever had anyone actually say it?
All but say it. I've had my sources, and one source in particular, say that based on his research, investigation, information, and contacts, everything he knows, and considering the parentage, the alleged parentage, that he is, in fact, I hesitate to use the word Manchurian candidate, but if there ever was one, he would be him. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and I've had many people say it to me, and they're in the intelligence group themselves, who have said it all points, and the reason I'm bringing this up is, and the reason I asked you the question is, that people have never said to me, he is thus and so. They've said that all the information that we have points in the direction of, and would seem to indicate. That's what they're saying, and parsing your words very carefully. But I do understand the difference between someone actually saying to me, "Oh yeah, he was a CIA operative, and I know his handler." That would be a totally different statement. Nobody has said that, and I know people directly involved in that agency and other agencies, and not one of them has ever said that he is that. They've said it. The information, the evidence would point toward it, but that's about it.
Okay, and I know you're very careful with your wording, and as I try to be as well. Would you expect, given your experience, your knowledge, your contacts, if that were to be true, would you expect that type of response, or would you expect a response saying, "Oh no, yeah, he's definitely a product of the CIA"? And we do know. I mean, there's information about his handler and that type of thing. Would you expect what we're getting now, or would you expect something with more specificity?
I would expect more specificity, and primarily, I think it may come yet, but it'll come in the form of a parry to a thrust to do him in, as it were, informationally. On the public scene, that his loyalties are questionable, and if it was going to be used, and whether false or not, I mean, let's face it, you have to listen to the people bringing this forward. But if it was meant to lend veracity to his loyalty to the United States, then that would be what I would be expecting to see that come out in that context. Where the thrust has come pretty directly to the heart, as it were, to show him as being a traitor or treasonous or a Muslim plant, which, I mean, we are seeing huge evidence to support that. But we're seeing less evidence to support the notion that he might have been a CIA candidate, Manchurian candidate, a man who has been built from the ground up. Many of the aspects of his life seem to show interventions, but the interventions are not. They're not from the CIA kind of the workshop. It doesn't have the hallmarks of the CIA workshop. What it has is the hallmark of the Muslim enterprise, the Brotherhood enterprise, and then there's another name that I won't use, but there is a group of Muslim extremists who, in former iterations, they were the assassins, and you know where I'm going with that. But those people, they seem to be in the background of a lot of these other moves, these staged endeavors from his early years, starting off with the notion of, you know, back with Mr. Jarrett, Vernon Jarrett, in his 1979 article, and I've referred to this before, as you have, you know, where he suggests that Arab oil money be used to win the loyalties of blacks in America and bring them over to the cause of either the communism or the Muslim Islamic ideology.
Interesting. I'm just one. Well, wow. There's a lot of things here. I'm kind of, well, I'll just say this, Jim. My current research, and this is something I've been working extensively on, and I know some things have been published on this. One on January 22nd, 2014, and I believe this is after I had mentioned this on air publicly, and also talked to some other people about this. But one of my areas of intense, extensive research, and feel free not to comment on anything or say, you know, whatever. But there's a group out there, and I've said this on air to the audience, saying bookmark this, mentally bookmark this, but the Subud organization.
Ooh. Ding.
Okay.
That rang the bell.
That rang the ding-a-ling, did it? Okay. Yeah. Jim, I got to tell you, I've gone, and folks, I'll just say it on there flat out here. I was turned on to this long before it made any type of wave in the media. And this is right after, as a matter of fact, right after the death of Loretta Fuddy. And this Subud organization, and stop me if I'm going to, you know, stop me if you want, but this Subud organization, it seems to be in the background of, it seems to be like this golden thread that runs through this string of other threads that everything else is connected to. Am I getting close?
Oh, yeah. It's a definite thread to follow. And, you know, at every juncture, you know, all these little intersections of not happenstance, but plan. I mean, Fuddy's death just opened that door. But if you remember years ago, Jerry Corsi, remember when he had brought out the book, Where's the Birth Certificate? He actually had the picture of that document where, you know, Dunham had printed or written in pencil Sabarka as the name. And
I had that on my list of things to ask you, because there's two different schools of thought on that. Why was that name placed on there and then crossed out?
Mm-hmm. Well, it may have been that she was trying to give him independence, but then was told, well, if you do that, of course, the man will have no country. He'll have no passport if you disavow him as an American right now, or whatever other passport he was traveling on at the time, because, of course, that's a question. Was he an Indonesian traveling on an Indonesian passport, or was he a British subject traveling on a British passport?
Exactly. And I know Jerry Corsi, Dr. Corsi, had done a lot of research on this, and we had him on our show talking about various things, including his book and the birth certificate issue, and of course the that very issue you spoke of about the passport. And I know. I mean, some say that, you know, it was the explanation that you gave, where the name was put on, perhaps independence, but the name Sabarka, is that, Jim, is that his Subud name,
Yes.
name?
Yeah, that is
okay.
the Subud name. Just like Fuddy, Loretta Fuddy had her own Subud name that even in the list, because every year they had the membership lists coming out. And of course, she was the leader. She was the president of the society for America, and she was listed under her Subud name.
Correct. Loretta Fuddy, I mean, she was not just a mere follower of Subud. She worked her way up the ranks. She became the chairwoman of Subud USA, and I find it interesting. It was based in Seattle from 06 to 08, and her Fuddy's relationship. Her name is Deleana Loretta Fuddy, and if you go to the official Subud memorial page, they drop the Loretta and refer to her simply as Deleana or whatever, Fuddy. But Anne Sotoro, her close relationship in association with members of the Subud cult, well documented. So this is something. Is Subud, to your knowledge? I'll be careful how I ask this. Is this a CIA operation or a CIA infiltrated operation? Either one.
No, I would suggest not. You could go down that bunny trail if you're following up on people who are suggesting that he is in fact a composite character put together, and his history has been put together by CIA agents over time. And he is the Manchurian candidate in the president's office. But we already have an intervention on the part of the CIA with blacks in the creation of that phony celebration. What was the name of that instead of Christmas? What do they call that?
Kwanzaa.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Happy Kwanzaa, Jim.
Yeah, that's the CIA celebration in place of Christmas. Very, very interesting. And hey, they bought into it. They played along with it, and I'm sure that the leaders have got to be embarrassed over falling for that one. But hey, we fell for Obama as president, so there you go.
Well, you know what, Jim? If I could, if you knew with absolute precision, and you could say who in the world is Barack Hussein Obama, I'd love to hear it. But based on what I'm hearing from you, you're more inclined, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're more inclined to say that he really is kind of an Islamic asset, a Muslim asset.
Yes, I would be definite in saying that. I wouldn't. That's not something I would retract. That's something with assurance I can say that he is. And let's face it, if you talk, and I'm sure you have sources who put the stamp of approval, the imprimatur of authenticity on that, because that's what's known out in the world. The intelligence communities of the world know that the man is a Muslim Marxist plant and financed through the Saudi money. And let's face it, he did not pass with the regular needed marks out of Occidental to get himself into Columbia. He never passed as per regular. Students would be required to the strictures of the number of courses to get a degree at Columbia. Of course, the gift, $20 million, helped to kind of grease the wheel to move him forward. And then, of course, the Law Society in Harvard, for him to be the president of the Law Society, the guy didn't write anything. None of the regular performance, the duties that are to be performed by anyone coming out with a law degree or even taking the title, the auspicious title of being in charge of the law review, goodness gracious, this guy didn't do anything. But following him, you see the trail of money. And at certain points in time, the big bucks fall from Arab oil and Saudi influence. It falls to his benefit.
Jimmy, you're exactly right. And where my research and my contacts, multiple contacts, and I had this conversation 2 days ago, when I was chasing that Subud thread, and I still am, for those who are listening, and you know who you are, but every time we get into this mindset, this discussion, this creation, this investigative work product of putting Obama, linking him to Arab oil, Saudi oil specifically. Well, the conversation comes back and what's Aramco? Well, it's a creation. I mean, Aramco is a CIA operation, or at least it was. Is that a correct statement?
It's a creation, it is, certainly, but it met a need at a particular point in time and safeguarded the relationship. And, those details I don't think we need to discuss here at this point.
Right.
You know that it was a creation that actually bridged a very troubled time. And it proscribed for us some safety and security in terms of the flow of oil. So, hey, whether it was a CIA operation or it was even the British MI6, they all were part of it. They were all in on it.
And that was the other thing too, the connection to the Brits. And Jim, do you remember when? And folks, you might tire of me telling this story, but do you remember back as a junior senator from Illinois when Obama traveled with Lugar on the disarmament delegation and was laid over in Perm and not allowed to leave Perm in Siberia in Russia because of some irregularities? There's two different stories, but the one I subscribe to is that there were some irregularities with Obama's passport, diplomatic
and that's passport. The truth. That's the true story, by the way. It was the passport. What I'm amazed at is, these Russians, they could have hammered the daylights out of the guy, but they stopped him, right? They stopped everything in its tracks. I can imagine poor Lugar going, "What in the world?"
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a 3-hour intervention there where really Obama was held for 3 hours, or I don't know if held is the right word, but certainly he was 3 hours alone with his Russian friends, interrogators, whatever. And from that, Jim, what I heard was that passport that on which he was traveling suggested, perhaps, that there was some British allegiance. Is that what you heard?
I'm just laughing, because it was a British passport, which, surely Lugar, didn't he? I mean, I thought the man was intelligent, but my goodness, would he not just kind of go, why do you have a British passport, Barack?
Well, yeah. Can you imagine that flight home? I mean, that discussion of the flight home. Oh, my goodness. I did find this. We're a couple of minutes before the top of the hour break. I did find this in my notes here, going back, and I know that I don't want to go too far down this road, based on our conversation. However, when you were talking about the mother's passport, Obama's mother's passport, where Sabarka appears in the section labeled "amend to include or exclude children," I found this. There was a researcher who concluded that the crossing out or the placement of Sabarka in that area and then crossing it out, it was to exclude Barack from her passport renewal, and Sotoro changed her mind about this exclusion after having been informed by the consulate that doing so would leave Barack passportless, which you had so concisely said. Now, the other possibility that people are talking about seems to be equally valid and would cast this in a different shadow. and the question here is, what if Satora was trying to include Obama in the renewal, but she wasn't able to produce a birth certificate? Now, you know, ding, am I okay? All right, because the Sabud name, Sabarka, just didn't do the trick. I mean, it just wasn't, you know, so that could explain why why the Sabud name, Sabarka, appears nowhere else, at least that we know of. Have you seen that Sabarka name anywhere else?
No, that's the only place it shows up, except for there is another document in Indonesia. And if you look at the school documentation,
yes.
his name actually shows up, and this hasn't been seen by the public yet, but it actually shows up on a classroom report on him, on his progress. On a progress report, sorry. Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, okay. I think Jerry Corsi had included that as an exhibit. I've got to double check, but
I think you're right. Jerry has got, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that. So, but that would stand to reason as well, or that would logically that would be logically conducive to this Subud relationship. Well, now let me ask you as a friend, Jim. Okay, and as a I'll just call you a senior advisor to Doug Hagmann, who's poking around here in this pool of Subud. Is this a dangerous place to poke?
Yes. Yeah, it is a dangerous place to poke.
All right.
It's a very significant, therefore, a very dangerous place to poke. And look at what happened with Loretta. And she was a loyalist. Or was she?
That's what I wanted to know from you, because to me, yes, or was she? What's your gut telling you about Loretta? Now, I don't know whether you saw this or not, but there are some inexplicable debt reductions right after she was placed in that position of the director of health. Okay.
Ding.
Yeah. All right.
Well, look, here's the way I see this playing out with her. I think Loretta went for the gusto. She saw that now was the chance for her to cash in. Seriously. And when you want to cash in, what do? You take whatever information you have and you present it to the powers that be and say, well, hey, my loyalty, I mean, I'd like to just retire. And I'd like to have, give me $10 million and, do it through whatever channels and, have me in some sort of a role where, I get an honorarium or whatever from a number of different boards, and the number's 10 million. And, we'll call it a day. And my silence is forever.
Boy, you go to that well once too often, or even once. And, it's that's why blackmailing is such a dangerous act, because, I mean, folks, I'm serious. I've known people who have been the victims of blackmail, and they're always worried about not the first request, but the subsequent requests.
Yeah, and when will it ever stop? But keep in mind that any negotiations that are done on behalf of Barry Soetoro, it's always Valerie Jarrett who takes care of the negotiations. And that woman, I mean, we're talking a lady dog, protecting the pup.
Wow. Yeah, and Valerie Jarrett is someone who we've got to talk about. Folks, you talk about some very intellectually stimulating discussion. Obviously, just from what you've heard so far, Dr. Jim Garrow is a man of incredible information. And I can tell you right now, he's not talking from notes. He doesn't have any notes in front of him. This is all from experience and from memory, from research, and from his work. So I've got to give Mr. Garrow, Dr. Garrow, a lot of credit with the level of information that he's got. And a lot of things you're hearing tonight, as Mr. Garrow had said, right from the post office, the Bank of Obama, or the Bank of the Fed, shall we say, to what we're talking about right now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special Wednesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Doug Hagmann here, flying solo on this 5th day of February 2014, working the boards, trying not to knock anything over or press any buttons accidentally. And so far, so good. I might have to take up drinking or something again. I don't know. No, it's just seriously, it is a testament to what Joe does here. In addition to being a co-host, he does operate the boards. And I want to thank Larry for pitching in and helping, and Troy, thank you so much for your kind support. But our very special guest today, Jim Garrow. Folks, Jim was on our program on Wednesday, January 1st, New Year's Day. He actually took time out of his busy schedule and took time off of holiday and appeared with us for 3 hours on the 1st of January. And, it was 3 or 4 days after that when an attempt was made on his life. And ladies and gentlemen, I could verify, based on what I know, that this was a legitimate, valid, bona fide attempt on his life. And, I for the day or two after I found out, I was stunned, because I was hoping upon hope upon hope. Now Jim's a pretty visible guy. Okay, he's out there. He's got a lot of name recognition, and he's got a lot. He does many programs. But I was hoping upon hope that we had nothing. His appearance on our program had nothing to do with his attempt on his life. I still hope that to be the case. But Jim, welcome back, my friend.
Well, thanks. And I bear ill will, in spite of the fact that I know full well that you're the cause of all the things that go wrong in my life.
I'm glad you said that with a chuckle. Yeah, I've been blamed for that and worse, to be sure. But Jim, we had John B. Wells on our program on Friday, and of course he was telling me about, telling the audience about the various people who he had on, Michael Hastings, Breitbart, others, the author of Philip. Oh goodness, I got the book right here, Bamboozled, about 9/11, the Big Bamboozle. Philip. I got new glasses here, and I still can't read this. Philip Marshall. Yeah, they've all met their demise, in one way, shape, or form, and this has got to be front and center on your mind. How do you handle it?
You heard what happened to his attempt to have me on his show. Did you hear about that?
It was, yes, and I got a couple of emails asking me to ask you what's going on with that. Yeah, it was. You were supposed to be on his premiere show on Monday, correct?
On Monday, and the servers crashed. At first, they thought it was as a result of the sheer volume of people, the numbers of people trying to sign up, because this is a subscription service and people pay money every month, and they thought that might be it. Well, he was talking to me about how, apologizing because all of this was happening, and I said, well, wait a minute, man. You take a good look, because it sounds, the pattern that I'm, listening to you describe, it sounds like you guys have been attacked, and you need to have some pro get in there and ping back some of the people who've come into your site, ping back and trail back and see if it goes to China. I said, that to me, it sounds exactly what you had in the setup with Mark Obama. Mark Okoth Obama DeZanjo, the other half-brother of Obama, who is now a partner with the intelligence service of the People's Liberation Army of China in the Internet business. And out of his Internet cafes in China have been many attacks against American business interests. So that's why I said to him, get someone on this who can ping back and follow the trail, from the NAP point, network access point. You can ping right back and find out the source of signals, and have a good look and see if you have just been attacked from China.
That's an interesting point. People have been asking me, what's his current status right now? And then I'm going to get back into how it relates to China. But will he be up and running here shortly, or is it going to be more of a delay?
Well, it kind of looks like there's going to be more of a delay. It might take off tomorrow. I'm hoping. We've already put our program in the can. We decided to just go ahead and record it. That was on the second day. The first day was such a mess. So on the second day, we thought, well, if this continues, let's get our program in the can, and then people can, respond. But, I feel so bad for John because, he's a bit of an institution online and in the late evening. And now that he's moving time, he's another factor out there where we need all the truth tellers that we can possibly get. That's what we need. All the encouragement that we can possibly give to the American people, because there's a lot to be encouraged about, and I hope we can get into some of that later. But poor John, he's really been, I think he's just been hacked like crazy, and he's being prevented from having the impact that we know he can have. And I'm sure it tracks back to buddies of the man in the White House.
It wouldn't surprise me a bit, and I had forgotten about this. I think it was maybe 2.5 weeks after you appeared, and I'm not. That's only I'm saying that as a marker in time. Something very unusual happened here at the studio. We had an intrusion into our network, and we've got, without saying too much, we've got not only redundancy but multiple networks that we use. So it's just not one network. In case one goes down, we have got another one, and that gets to be a little bit pricey after a while. And then you've got and we also have offshore, out of country locations that we use. But something got into one of the networks that we thought was extremely secure. It turned my hard drive into my office computer into a doorstop, my external hard drive into a doorstop, and we're talking about right there almost 2 terabytes worth of data that was saved on these hard drives. Now, that said, of course, we have redundancy and backups upon backups upon backups, but nonetheless, that took us a good 10 days, 2 weeks anyway, to really get things back to where they needed to be. And of course, we had to bring somebody in to change the network configuration and redo all the networks. And by the time, at the end of the day, it was a huge expense, and it was a huge the expense was from the time, really, what we paid for the time. So, Jim, you know what? You've got this. You have a tendency, perhaps, to bring with you this cloud with you. I won't blame it on you, but it seems to be that there's this. Well, not seems to be that we know that there is this effort to silence the truth tellers. How long we got, Jim? How long do we have in the new media to keep doing what we're doing and saying what we're saying? Or are they going to pull the plug on us? Yeah,
they are. It's in the cards. They know full well that communication, if they can stifle communication by, for example, closing the internet, so many people will. It'll silence a lot of opposition. Now, the opposition, of course, will take a different form because people aren't stupid and they've already prepared. I've got my CB radio ready to roll. If the power went out today, I've got everything back. I've got backup for everything. I'm Faraday caged like crazy, so I'm hardened. So I've looked ahead to these things, these eventualities, but many people haven't, and so they're not ready for it. But I'm certain that Mr. Obama knows full well that if he can take either control of communication totally or just shut it down, then he wins a significant part of the game as far as organizing a resistance against what he might be attempting. Without communication, you're kind of fried, or you're limited for a while before you reestablish. But let's face it, the people who are the smart ones out there are fully provisioned, ready to roll, connected with their networks, I think connected as well.
Yeah. On our side, not the enemy side, but on our side, we're working on different measures to stay on the air, and I'm a little bit hesitant to explain how we're going to do that at the moment. But I can tell you this: people will know. Yeah. People will know when that does happen. So we've invested time and money to do that. And it's necessary to do, but Jim, I was talking with Pat Campbell. He's the talk show host out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, KFAQ, and he knows of you, and of course he knows what we're doing, and good friends. But he said to me the other day, he said, just imagine the internet without, just take one website, the internet without the Drudge Report. What would that do to the flow of information? Or the internet without InfoWars, or the internet without us, or the internet without, your information. And he said that he was told to expect that. And when I asked by whom, who said that, he said, no, people that are in the industry that are complicit in this. So
just war game it. Just get a group of guys together who've been in intelligence and who know how to war game scenario things. And what's the first thing you do? You shut down the internet. I mean, it's so simple. Bang, and it thwarts many people. For example, it'll stop a ton of people the flow of income. It'll stop dead. Just dead.
Yeah, of course. Commerce. I don't know how much business is done via the internet, but it certainly has. It's certainly got to be a very significant amount of money. But if I hear what you're saying, you're talking about a world, or at least the United States, without the internet, or a very marginal internet, if that. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah. Well, you know how the internet works, and the major network access point for the entire world is in Chicago. That's it. That's your major network access point. And let's face it, some hackers from China got in and actually rerouted all of China's internet to a little building in Podunk, Illinois. I'm just going to say Podunk. A little, 1,400 square foot house. All of the internet traffic in the country of China was routed through this house by some guys, and I think it was, it sounds to me like one of those bet things, let's see if you can do this, and sure enough, they did it. But we have, about hops from the NAP point? Do you know about the number of hops and the pipe that you have? Do you know about all that?
Yes. Yeah.
So, but out there may not be aware, but there is a point in the world where it is the major hub of the internet, and all traffic from the internet goes through that hub, and it's been portioned out. For example, there's another network access point in New York, but the primary one is in Chicago for the entire world.
I didn't realize it was Chicago, and boy, doesn't that just fit? It just fits. All right. Well, Jim, let me kind of turn this over to you. What do you want to talk about here? Because you've got so much information that is of such value to people. And I know that, of course, you said, you want to get into the proactive measures that we'll be taking. But before we move into that, you said a lot with the post office, the monetary system. What is it that you think? I mean, here we sit on the 5th day of February. We have the Olympic Games coming up in Sochi. That's already looking like it's a disaster. Geopolitically, over in Syria, we know that Putin's hands are rather tied until after the Olympics, based on the threats by the Saudis, if you will, or the implied threats by the Saudis to screw up the Olympics. But once they're over, I've got this feeling that really all heck is going to break loose at the hands of Putin. But that's just one theory, one working theory. Is that of relative importance, or where do you want to take this discussion here as we sit at this round table?
Well, why don't we go back just in the last couple of weeks? I've put some things out there, and it sounds like are you reading some of the stuff I'm putting out? It sounds like you are.
I follow you. I got your surveillance.
Cool. Well, that means you're now on the watch list for sure, Doug. That's for sure. But let's go back. I think last week I put out something with respect to what I learned of a cultural event, a cultural norm when I was in China, working with the schools that I was involved in. And I put it out in a story form, and how I kind of learned about the impact of an older gentleman in the city of Chongqing, where we had opened a school. And people oftentimes they'll ask me the name of this, the name of that, and I never say anything. I never give the names, but I'm going to give out a name right now. Chujing Shongshui.
Yeah,
I know that
let me spell that
right into your mind. Chujing Shongshui. So that was the name of the school in Chongqing, where we had established a relationship with the public school, and this public school had a rather important position in terms of where it was geographically, and where it sat was actually across the road, 100 yards down, and across the other side of the road from the second most important Communist Party of China headquarters for Chongqing. And of course, Chongqing is 31 million people in terms of the number of people in that municipality. So it's the largest city in the world. Most people don't know that. But sitting in buildings that are very much of the style of architecture, grandiose, big open courts, very much like Tiananmen Square, the Forbidden City in Beijing. But this provides the secondary housing of the important folks of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. So it's a very important place. But where would that place us as a school? Well, we were the easy drop-off point for the leaders for this, huge mega metropolis of 31 million people. And then, of course, the surrounding districts, because this was, for Western China, this was the Communist Party headquarters for all of the west of China. So it sat at the confluence of the Jilin rivers and the Yangtze River, where, by the way, the Japanese slaughtered 600,000 people in an area called Jaifeng Bay. But this particular group of leaders dropped their children off to our school. And what I was called upon to do was to set up the international wing English language so that these kids in their senior years could be prepared and get credits from, and in this case it was from the Ontario Ministry of Education in Canada, to get the Ontario Secondary School diploma, allowing entrance into universities around the world. So a person could go to Harvard, could go to Oxford, could go to MIT, wherever, with this graduation diploma. In addition to having written Gaokao, the entrance examinations for universities in China. So a person would have both in hand. They could go locally or within the confines of China, or they could go internationally. So we were in a very important position. And the grounds themselves, very important. But here's where the story kind of unfolds. I had noticed over a period of time that an older gentleman was meeting the students as they would come through the tank barriers, because there were these concrete pylons, to stop tanks from moving in, and going into the yard, the rather large soccer field and the racetrack, the track for field events, to the main buildings. And there were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main buildings, and there were 2 huge dormitory buildings where students would live who were coming in from surrounding areas or further afield. But this older gentleman used to say something to the kids as they come in, very smiley. And over the years, I got that. I mean, I said hi to him all the time and gave the little bow to him. You know, you don't really bow as much in China as in other countries, but you know, he would have a word for everyone, always smiling, a very encouraging man, and obviously well thought of. And that was, you know, I thought of him as the grandfather. Well, there was an event that took place where I needed to fly out to deal with a situation in another school, and well, this is a very, very poor example of somebody interfering with something they shouldn't have. And the long and short of this story has to do with that slaughter of 600,000 people, of the Chinese people by the Japanese. And what this guy, a newbie to China, he'd only been there, you know, a couple of months, so he really didn't know of the sensitivities. But he asked for the students to bring in, kind of a show and tell, to bring in items that reflected back in that period of time when the Japanese came in. You know, did you have anything that you were able to, you know, your parents grabbed or your grandparents grabbed from the Japanese, like war souvenirs and stuff? Anyway, you couldn't have done anything worse. In fact, what happened is, in the school, they actually boycotted the school. And the kids stayed away. And this school had about 2,500, 2,700 students. You know, it was a large populated school. So I had to fly off to this other part of China to get in the mix of this. And this is where this older gentleman, it was the school he was at, that he was greeting all these kids. And you know, he was like the grandpa. So when I arrived, of course, still no students. This is the second day of this strike. And I'm there with the principal, and we go in to meet with dignitaries. And you never know who you're going to meet with. Well, who's sitting at the table but the Minister of Education for the entire province of that particular province, and the mayor of the town, and the town was about 8 million people. And we were the elite school. We've been around for quite a while, and we're well known. And so we sat down and talked, and you know, the Minister of Education let us know exactly what was wrong, and in Chinese, of course, Mandarin. And my interpreter, I said to her, just be quiet, and when it's finished, give me a quick summary, like 2 sentences if you can, and I'll make my statements and try and you know, be humble enough and recognize that something was wrong, and we were very, very embarrassed and sorry, and you know, and try to placate everyone. So we end up at the final end of the whole meeting, after I had made my presentation, and I thought, well, you know, I've done what I can. I've made supplication. I've groveled as I should, and I'll do whatever you ask. And that's basically the bottom line. Nobody said anything for a few minutes, and I thought, man, did I blow it or what? Like, have I made it worse? And the guy who talked was sitting at the side of the room, and I hardly even noticed him, but old Ben, the old guy, who was in his 90s, by the way, a rickety old guy, but, you know, just a beaming, smiley kind of dude. He was at the side. He stood up, and he started to talk. And the interpreter, of course, is telling me what's going on. And, well, what he did was he summarized what he saw in our relationship as foreigners coming into their school. And he talked about how he had observed me as the owner of this group of schools across China, giving proper respect when the national anthem was being played and when the flag was raised, and that he was very impressed that a foreigner would think as highly as I did and honor the country the way I had. So that was his sort of introduction in kind of a mollification of a lead-in to this very difficult situation. And then he basically said how things should be, and he summarized, and you know, and that was it. And when he turned to leave, everyone in the room stood, and it was the kind of honored situation that he held, the position that he held. And he went out, and of course we ironed it out, and we replaced the teacher, and you know, things were back to normal. But Ben, the old guy, had the final say on how things were, and it showed the honor that he was held in and the position that he held within the area. it was later that I discovered from Ben, because once I knew, how important he was, a few meetings down the road, I asked him about the situation between the Chinese and the Japanese. And I said, well, frankly, how bad is this? What, the sentiments? And I said, I know you were around, because he had known Mao Zedong. He'd actually known him. And, of course, we're running out of those people because they're basically dying off. But he told me, he summed it up with 2 words about the relationship between China and Japan. And China observed Japan and basically says, one day. And what they mean is a very ominous one day, that statement. One day they will get them back for what they've done. That's the implication in it. And so at the end of this essay that I wrote, I put, my summary was, America, I don't know what you've got by way of arrangements with Japan, but it might be good to step back a little bit here, because Japan did some things in the past, and, the music that they're going to have to face is a tune that they have to face alone. And I don't want to see America get between Japan and China, because China is now pretty superpowerish, and we are losing it. Anyway, so that was what happened a couple of weeks ago.
So from what you just said, if I understand this correctly, is that we are about to witness some mischief, some China, Japan feeling froggy over there, and we could see something develop of global consequence.
Well, we've just seen how far China will go, and you haven't heard it, but Fukushima was not an accident. Fukushima was a deliberate event caused by China as an attack on Japan.
Okay. Now, how? And I know, for the new people listening, how did that take place?
It was sabotage, and reactors work, in particular ways. But with reactors, the big thing with a reactor is cooling, and if you can impede the cooling, you can cause a shutdown and eventually a meltdown. And then the worst of the worst is if there is an actual nuclear detonation, which is possible if the right materials are in place. Well, the Chinese made sure the right materials were in place. So you haven't heard anything from Japan. We hear of it, the scuttlebutt, kind of floating around. But there was a real signal to Japan from China. Now, the old people, the leaders of Japan, they understand how tenuous a position they're in vis-a-vis, the future with China. And you have seen no response. And that's very significant.
All right. So what do you, Jim Garrow, expect to see happen in the short term or at some point, without necessarily putting a date on it? What do you expect to see? If you woke up one morning and read a headline in the paper, what would it read?
Well, if the headline was looking at May 16th, and we were looking at Operation American Spring, we may see something happen. We may. If Mr. Obama is foolish, he will do something, and it'll be military, and it would be a huge error on his part. But this man is listening to advice that is that's founded in concepts that are not American, and the sweet reasonableness doesn't seem to prevail within his thinking. So I expect that he will react badly to, say, 10 million people showing up, basically calling for his resignation.
Okay. And I had that on my list of things to ask you about this, or ask you about this march on Washington, headed, it appears, by Colonel Riley, I believe it is.
Harry Riley, yeah.
Okay. Are you in support of this this march?
Well, I'm in support of the right of the people to seek redress.
I agree.
and petition their leadership, which, of course, is built into the right and rule in law. We have that right to petition the leadership in redress of whatever it might be. So for people to go to Washington and demand that the leadership resign, that's well within the right of the people to do. They're seeking redress to unconstitutional actions, breach of the rule of law by the leadership, and they want an end to it. And so one of the things they could do is demand that Mr. Obama step down. Now, if he did, of course, that would be rather unique in American history. But if not, wow, I don't know where it will go.
All right. Well, my concern, Jim, is the possibility that this is, well, I don't want to say a setup from the start, but, you know, if you're looking, to me, the beauty of the Tea Parties, for example, is the lack of centralized control, the lack of centralized leadership. To co-opt, we'll say, the entirety of the Tea Party, because there's no central head, or at least none that is recognized, would be a difficult task because you'd have to infiltrate many groups. In this case, to co-opt the head of this march on Washington, or at least co-opt the initiative, is possible. That's number one. And the second part of that is, aren't we creating a target-rich environment, so to speak?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we are. Let me speak to what you just mentioned about the leadership itself. An attempt has been made, and you know, pretty obvious, but you know, dissembling and disinformation is a science. But to make it seem that there are splits, schisms within the group, that's one way to start to have things unravel, because nobody wants to go into something where there's dissent. You want to march in tune with each other rather than go into a squabble. And so one group put out a rumor that Major General Paul Vallely, who has, by the way, distanced himself from this event, and I can see why, and I think it's a very wise move on his part. But given the fact that he could be a target, which it turns out he is a target, they're trying to suggest that he's a Satanist. Now, just the mention, just the mere mention, the breathing of Satanism with a leader of an event, I mean, the Christians are going to run away like crazy. It's like cockroaches running away from a light. You know, you will, and excuse me, Christians, for I'm a Christian too, so excuse me for, referring to you as cockroaches, but it would be just as bad as they scurry away to get away from this, because you don't want to have anything to do with Satanism. So in the end, I actually called Paul and asked him. I said, look, this rumor is out there, and I gave him the source, by the way, because I happen to know where the source is in this. Address it, put the truth out. So he wrote a thing. He wrote talking about when he was a colonel and he was investigating, and he got a major to write a response paper based on mind control experiments that were going on, and also on the fact that an investigation was underway about Satanists organizing within the military intelligence services. And, of course, he dealt with that, and people were transferred all over, all over the world, really, to break it up, break what was going on up. And so it was thoroughly investigated. It was thoroughly documented. And so he summarized it and put it out there to show that his only involvement with a sect of Satanists was investigation of it and the movement of these people by reassignment to end the influence that it had. So that information went out there. The second thing that was being used against this movement before it even got going, Operation American Spring, was to suggest that there was a schism between the military, either retired or current, who want to be part of this. And the suggestion was that, one faction wanted to be armed, and another faction wanted to go disarmed. And, of course, Washington, D.C., you're not allowed to carry firearms, right? Even if you have that's just the law of that area. Whether constitutional or not, that happens to be the law. So, again, this is a false notion that's being put forward through disinformation so that it would split up groups. Once again, good people who don't want to be involved in conflict would stay away. And, of course, that's the purpose of the whole thing, and that's why these people are doing it. They tend to control. They want to control these things, and if they can't be in control, they'll try and destroy it from the inside out, and that's exactly what's going on. A kind of play that would seem and smell like Mr. Obama.
Well, no, just to be for the listeners out there, when you were talking about Paul Vallely, and I spoke with him, I don't know, it's been some time, and we had a pretty good conversation. But then I was told, well, he has this relationship with Michael Aquino and Aquino, whatever his name is, and of course that whole backdrop from 20, 30 years ago came up, and of course, so what you're saying, however, is Paul Vallely basically backed out because, well, of the appearance. He did not want to sully the movement. Is that what you're saying?
Well, his backing out was before this material, these kinds of things started floating out there. The rumors were floating out there. But he did address it just to keep things clean and show people the actual facts of the matter. Like Major Aquino was actually one of the Satanist guys. So, yeah.
No, okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. And yeah, I'd love to see. Well, what's your gut feeling about Operation American Spring? How do you think it's going to turn out? Is there, you're obviously behind it, correct?
You mean in terms of organizing?
No, I mean supporting.
I'm supporting it. No, I have nothing to do with organizing it. I'm in support of the notion of seeking redress, which everyone can. I will be there, by the way. I'm going to go. So physically I'll put myself at risk, even though it would be a very interesting, time for Obama to overstep his power.
Yeah, I would like to attend as well. Joe and I were talking about this and considering our positions. Perhaps we should go. Obviously, we believe in the fact that we need to hold these elected officials accountable, and we need to do our part. And if we, it's very difficult to say, well, we think you should go and then not attend ourselves. I mean, it's kind of it's certainly not right. So perhaps we'll see you there. That's going to be an interesting period of time. And as far as putting ourselves at risk. At risk from violence, at risk from, for arrest, or just identification, or what are you referring to there?
All of the above, including information gathering on who's part of this, and then the follow-up door knocks later. I mean, let's face it. What did the Nazis do? The Nazis had people in the crowds whenever there was a gathering. They had people in the crowds finding out who the people were. And later on, the knocks on the doors came. And those knocks were not pleasant things because people started to disappear. And depending on the reportage, reporters were closed out. They were no longer invited to things where, the Nazi Party, for example, was speaking. Hitler himself or other representatives were speaking. Those people would, if the reportage was in any way negative or questioning of motive or direction, they were disinvited, and then later on, of course, they disappeared. And of course, the Jewish ones immediately they stopped inviting them at all, and of course, leading up to Kristallnacht and you know what happened there. But that's the sort of thing. That's one sort of thing that could happen out of this, and by being there. And with the camera scrutiny, with the satellite scrutiny, with the drone scrutiny, we will certainly be well documented in terms of our involvement. And with the new digital photography, they can take one snapshot and be able to see and analyze the faces of, 10,000 people at a time, like bang, 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 you've got the entire crowd. What if 10 million people come? And what if they slowly and carefully unravel the identities of every single person who is there, and then they're paid a visit? This is a possibility. And the hint was very clearly given by Valerie Jarrett. Those people who are with us will be rewarded. Those people who are against us will pay a price.
That's pretty chilling. Those are chilling words, to be sure. Wow. All right. Jim, what I have a problem with here is we conduct these investigations and look at what's taking place in our government and trying to really hoping for a solution without thinking the worst. I'll just leave it at that. What do you know, for example, about the Speaker of the House, John Bonnier? Why hasn't he done anything? Why haven't the members of Congress done anything? And I'm not asking for. Well, I guess what I'm looking for is, what do you know about the position or about the state of the people who could do something about Obama, who could reverse these executive orders and this agenda, but they're not doing anything? What's behind that?
Well, in every case, and I mean it, every case, you will find that information has been gathered, and I think everybody has been guilty of something over the course of their lives. None of us are pure. We're all pure as the driven slush, as I like to say.
That's good.
None of us are pure, and the last guy who was perfect, of course, you know what they did to him. Yeah. So here we are. We're in a position of having to watch our less than perfect leaders succumb to threats, succumb to bribery. On one side, there's groups that are just lining up for the cash, and of course the convenience of being invited to the right parties and just being included in everything. And then there's that other group that are just being silenced. And let's be really specific. Let's go down and look at why Obamacare even exists when it could have been stopped by the Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice, Mr. Roberts. What happened there? Well, they had violated the law in the adoption of those two children of theirs, and that was held over their heads, and that's what silenced Roberts.
You know what, Jim? I've heard that, and I have no problem believing that to be the case. But on balance, looking at that, is that big of a deal relative to everything else that we see, all of the other dirty things that could be held over somebody's head, the not by the book adoption of children? Would that be enough?
Oh yeah, you would die for your kids. You'd die for your family. So to put them through some sort of a ringer, which would be guaranteed by whoever pulled the message, took the message and confronted Roberts with, maybe over coffee, maybe another senior member of the judiciary who happens to be a family friend, maybe a church friend. Who knows who it might have been, but a frank little discussion over coffee indicating you don't want this, because, boy, can it get ugly. And if it goes ugly on this, think about number 2 or number 3 or number 4 item that we can deal with. And, these people, thugs, they have there's no morality involved. There's no sensitivity involved. They have a goal, they have a mission, and they will get there, whether they have to use a steamroller over you or destroy the lives of your kids or destroy your reputation. Whatever it takes, and that's what we're dealing with. A guy who will do whatever. Let's face it, he'll stand up and swear to the American people that this is truth, and full well it's not.
I get that. What is George W. Bush? What's his complicity in all of this, based on your research, your findings, your knowledge, inside knowledge? on the placement of Obama. I find it very difficult to believe, as a two-term president leaving the White House, handing over the keys to Barack Hussein Obama. I find it very difficult to believe that Bush didn't know everything that was going on. Is that the case?
All of the information was in hand, but a lot of it couldn't be touched. It just couldn't be touched. There are so many intertwined relationships that go to many different sectors in the planet. Because Obama, you have to look really closely at who he is. Like, once you know who he really is, and the abilities for threats to be used. I mean, now we've got the royal family of Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud, involved. We've got the people running Kenya involved. We've now got people in Indonesia involved. We've got complicity in Hawaii. We've got complicity in Harvard. We've got the Old Boys network of, certain lodges, Masonic and otherwise.
Right.
It gets pretty thick. So moves made in a particular direction by Mr. Bush were probably stymied and well advised not to go there, because after all, he was retiring.
Well, true. Okay. And I get that. I guess the level of complicity, it certainly is a tangled web that we're looking at. I've got, Jim, three different questions from three different people, obviously, who sent me emails. One from Katie out of Miami, one from John from Atlanta, and it looks like Ken from San Francisco, listening live right now, dying for me to ask you.
Okay, Katie,
and I'm not sure,
Katie with the tan. I'd love to hear from Katie with the tan.
Katie with a tan, yeah. I've got snow blindness, and she's probably golden skinned. The question here, and it's I'll paraphrase all three. Basically, they want to know, what's your knowledge? What happened on 9/11? I know that we're going back in time here, but I know that's a hinge point in our nation's history. Based on your inside sources, what happened on 9/11?
Well, we had 18 Saudi Arabians and another one, a 19th
19?
person. All of them
Okay.
Muslim, all of them jihadis, all of them having taken a pact together to die in the service of Islam, to bring down the great Satan. And they were tasked, they were blessed, they all made those videos, and I don't know, have they ever come out, the videos of each one of them making their suicide pact, and they chant their little thing, and then they address, how wonderful and glorious it is to die for Islam,
right.
And the Prophet, of course, that's part of their little thing, but that's usually videotaped, and I understand they do exist.
No, I know the 9/11 Commission had made reference to the various videos. I'm not sure if they were ever made public. Folks, you know that better than I, but it would, I guess, from reading the extraneous text here on these emails, what they're looking at is how much government complicity was there to allow this to happen, or whatever their level of complicity was, and ultimately what was their intent, and were their objectives achieved in terms of what we're living through today? And that's a summation of all three emails.
Okay. Well, and I'm not trying to be coy. I cannot address much more than I have. I can say this, that a week after 9/11 took place, I had a meeting up here in Canada with the FBI, CIA, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the RCMP, and I think a local cop, I think we are the police chief or whatever here in Toronto, brought them together so that I could give them my file. Because at that point in time, believe it or not, I was involved in China, right? Because I was in the thick of it with Mark Obama DeSanjo. I was in the thick of it there in China with him because the red flag had gone up about him showing up. And then I was in the middle of negotiating with Osama bin Laden's sister to purchase Jeddah Private School for Boys.
Oh, man.
I know, and here would have been a great listening post at the jump-off point for everyone going to Mecca, because they all fly into Jeddah, by the millions every year, and so it would have been the great gateway. Would have been a great listening post, but along with all the other listening posts that I had in China. But yeah, that's what I was doing, and so I turned over my file to all these people to let them know, the tapes, everything that I had. From conversations with the sister of Osama bin Laden.
So you were in a very prime position, but I know from our last conversation on the first January 1st, really that went nowhere, did it? That didn't go anywhere.
That's right. It didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's and perhaps that by itself can speak for or speak to what you cannot say. Very interesting. Jim, hold that thought. We have our hard break right now. I'll tell you what, when we get back, we can talk about the positive aspects of things that we can do, the productive things, and where you want to go, as you had indicated a little bit earlier this hour. Folks, you're listening to the Wednesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It is the 5th day of February, 2014. Little button there. Just give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. All righty. Yeah, just need another arm, folks. Flying solo here tonight. Joe is taking care of his wife this evening. She's just undergoing some tests here at a local clinic or at a nearby clinic, and but she'll be fine. She'll be fine. We talked, and things are just fine. That said, we're very pleased to have Dr. Jim Garrow. Folks, you might remember him from January 1st, 2014, talking about starting the year out with a bang. That was a very explosive show, and it certainly is still being downloaded seriously by the thousands each day all across the world. So it's Dr. Jim Garrow is a good draw, and he's certainly an interesting guest. He has got a lot of experience. So at any rate, Dr. Garrow, welcome back, sir.
Thank you. It was a good break. I did lots of stuff.
Well, sorry, that snort just came out. I was thinking, I just envisioned you like going out and shoveling your driveway and whatever. But meanwhile, I'm playing with knobs and buttons and dials. Jim, before the last hour, you're saying, hopefully we can talk about some proactive, positive things. What would you have in mind?
Well, let's start thinking locally, because in the political game, which it is, as you know, a game, everything is local. Everything extends from your locality, whether it be, your school board or some commissions, the water commission, the electric commission, whatever it might be, being a mayor, being a councillor, being a reeve in your area, or regional government, your state, all the way up to the Senate, of course, and the House. But if we are going to impact our localities and thereby our nation, that's where it always goes. Because if you can take control of your own area, where you live, and make an impact for positive good in your area, then I think we've got the secret to changing the nation. It's not all about everything happening in Washington, because Washington is its own little world, its little kingdom in underneath the Beltway. But you can do so many wonderful things in your own locale that you can change the direction of things just by getting involved. The country is basically run by about 3% of the population. That's all it takes, about 3% of the population who actually make things happen. So if you can become one of the 3%ers, you can change the direction of the nation. So that's one of my encouragements this evening is to get involved, whether it's your school board or it's something to do with local government, or it's something to do with volunteer organizations or your church, whatever it might be, your synagogue. Get involved. Take it by the horns. Find out what it is you can do. Figure out whether you agree with things or not. The things you don't agree with, well, get in there. Fight for what you'd like to see changed. And you'll find that there's lots of people very much like you who would like to see things changed and will probably want to help you out in that direction. Here's the other thing. You don't necessarily have to be a leader. Just get involved with people who, you listen to what they say and you agree with what they say and it makes sense from your own ideology, your own religious perspective, your own belief system. Then get involved and do it, because you can, in fact, in the end, change the direction of the nation. Let's remember something. A number of years ago, the Christian Coalition got together. They got together based on churches, based on community groups, and they, talk about community organizing like the guy in the White House was involved in. It was at the local level, almost the precinct level, that huge sweeping change hit the nation. And Ronald Reagan, he sat in the White House as a result of people looking at voter cards and looking at scorecards about voting records. A great thing. Information is almost power. So you have an opportunity to get involved, and don't be discouraged by everything you hear from the White House, because that is one picture of what's going on in the nation. What you see around you with the neighbors that you have, the friends that you have in your organizations, your schools, your churches, whatever, these are wonderful things. And you know these people. They know you. They know they can trust you, or you know who the crazies are. They're there. But you work with them. You work around them. You do whatever it has to be done to make things work. So you're to be lauded if you're already involved. If you're not, think about being involved, because we need you. The whole nation needs you as individuals to get involved and make a difference. Keep in mind something, too. The man sitting in the White House is there because one large religious group chose not to be involved in the elections. They stayed home, and for whatever reason, they stayed home, but they didn't get to the ballot box, and that's why he's sitting there. The change that he touted didn't need to take place. We could have had someone else in there, but many Christians stayed away. Well, your responsibility is to get in and get involved, and I hope that in future you remember that lesson, because it's costing our nation pretty heavily, and we have to look to ourselves as being the ones you can point the finger at. That's just one little word there, sir.
No, and that's good advice. One thing I've noticed, Jim, since the election of Obama, really since 2008, as I gradually became more and more awake and then connected to what was going on, what was really going on, I noticed this difference. Now, I'll just use my neighbors as an example, all but one. That one's a whole different story. But everyone's got one in their neighborhood. But anyway, I noticed that we were becoming more and more conversive about, well, instead of talking about the weather or talking about stupid things or inconsequential things, I noticed that the talk became a little bit more not only subdued but purposeful. And I say that for a reason, because it's almost like we were doing this ritual kind of dance. We knew each other. I've lived where I lived for nearly 20 years, along with my same neighbors. It's a stable environment. But really, we never talked about anything during that course of time until right after the Obama election. And then what really happened is when he was reelected, the conversations got more focused, like, what are you going to do, or what are you seeing? And it was almost like we were, kind of testing each other to see where we're at. And I've noticed that more and more, that like-minded people are gravitating toward each other. So I find that hopeful, especially in a, really, if the stuff hits the fan situation. I see some camaraderie and some workability there. I guess I mentioned that. Is that what your experience has been, where I don't want to say battle lines are being drawn, but I think you get the idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, for some people, it really is. That's the way to characterize it. That, in fact, they look at this as a battle or an invitation to a battle. They're so incensed at the actions of the man in the White House and the loss of freedom, the loss of liberty, and almost the loss of dignity, because one of the other things I see is that we are being treated almost as if we are not to be trusted, we're not worthy. If we don't share a particular ideology, we're not to be listened to at all. In fact, we're to be poo-pooed and denigrated, and to some degree, it looks as though there's an attempt to wipe us out. As Valerie Jarrett stated, if you're not going to stand with us, then you'll pay a price. Well, there's certain ideologies that are being pushed. The Marxist ideologies, the communist frame of reference that's being pushed now. I mean, that doesn't sit well with the American public. So I'm hearing a kind of a dynamic shift where people they're fed up and they're looking for direction as to what to do with being unsettled and not in agreement with the direction that the government is taking things. So they're looking for that kind of direction. And, someone is going to come along, I think, who can enunciate the feelings well enough that people will recognize it as representative of how they feel, what they're thinking, and maybe this person can encapsulate for them a good, positive direction. Do this.
Right.
And I think that's what people need to hear is somebody say, do this.
Okay. Well, and that's something we can all do. And as you mentioned as well, get involved in the local level. Now, Bob L., from Idaho, makes a comment here. What good will this do? The black box voting and the voting machines appear to all have been rigged or compromised. And he makes a good point. I mean, have we passed that point? I mean, certainly, is the ballot box still relevant in the United States?
Well, let me split up what you've mentioned, because you threw something out there at the last. I appreciate what he's saying, because I'm one of the ones who's been kind of trumpeting from the balcony that things are not right. We know that the Diebold machines had been switching votes of people. They watched it happen as they voted for one candidate, and it switched the vote over to another. And, of course, let's name the candidate. It switched from a vote for Romney, for example, over to Obama, and they couldn't fix it. And that's the other thing. We've had an examination of the voting machines. It's been looked at. It was discussed. I think there was a Senate committee where the people who were in charge of the voting machines, in charge of the CITL software that was used to run the machines and record the votes, they basically said that there were no protections, that they could not show that the person who voted actually got the vote that they placed. For the candidate they placed. There was no way to track it. Once it was in the system, it was in, and that's the way the system had been built. Now, I have a problem with the fact that Chuck Hagel has been rewarded with, being the Secretary of Defense. Is it Defense now? But he
Yes.
was the president Diebold when these machines were purchased. The other thing is the software itself, Seidel, is owned by George Soros, that company. So we have difficulties with putting our trust in the election results. Can we absolutely trust the machines to have done the job that they were bought to do? And the answer to that is no. It's in doubt. When we have whole counties where 140% of the vote turned out, or 120 or 110, so more people were voting than actually lived in the area. That's craziness. Or 100% of the vote went for Obama, and 0 votes went for Mr. Romney in counties. These are impossibilities. And so when you see that, you have to say to yourself, or to the collective conscience of the nation, is this an honest election or is it not? I believe that the only way that we can safeguard honesty in elections from now on is if we go back to the very primitive, make an X in that little circle or the box next to the name of a person. No hanging chads, no silliness with computer, plagiarism or stealing of the vote. Let's go back to that and assure that your neighbor will be there invigilating. He will secure the vote, and the ballot box will be locked afterwards. And you still have those ballots so you can recount. And they should be protected, and the processes need to be followed, and not, 2 weeks later you find 4 boxes that, for some reason are 90% for Obama that have been discovered in a warehouse, or, a lot of baloney went on afterwards. Sorry.
No, okay, and that's obviously that's what we need to do. We have questions here pending from Sandy, Roger, Tim, and Alphonse. Now, these are really kind of all over the board, Dr. Garrow, so bear with me. Sandy wants to know, tapping your intelligence resources and your intelligence background. Sandy writes this: do you know Osama bin Laden better as Tim Osman?
No, I don't.
There you go, Sandy. Okay. It's my understanding, if I recall correctly, didn't Osama bin Laden go by that name, or wasn't that his alleged CIA name?
There are a few, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a few names, yeah. A lot of that had to do with banking, by the way.
You know what? It's all about money, isn't it? I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's all about money, and it's all about money. Follow the money. So what you're saying is bin Laden had more than one alias, and I guess I could extrapolate by saying more than one bank account too, huh?
Yeah. Here's a factoid. I'll throw it out. 55 Bloor Street East in downtown Toronto. Just a few shops, because it was the next apartment building to the major center intersection of all of Canada, Yonge Street and Bloor Street in downtown Toronto. So who owned on the third floor, apartment 308? Who owned that? Well, Osama bin Laden. And who found out about it? Well, who let the authorities in Canada know? Of course, I did. But nobody knew at that point in time.
Well, bin Laden wasn't living in apartment 308, was he? At any given time?
Well, he had purchased it, and he had been in it at one point in time, yes. What was he doing in Toronto?
Well, I was going to ask you that, Dr. Garrow.
And that's why I was asking you.
Oh. Well, I'm sure he was going up on the CNN tower and grabbing some Tim Hortons while he was there, but...
hey, you got it.
Yeah, anything more substantive, more than that?
Not that I know of. I don't know. I happen to be the one who discovered who owned it and let the authorities in Canada know, and of course our own authorities.
Well, this whole 9/11 thing. I mean, I'll go back to the one question that we had earlier. To me, it seemed like a hinge moment in time that was certainly orchestrated. Things happened. It caused really this environment in which we live. Was that the objective? I mean, not the sole objective, but was that the event that was needed to really push us on the fast track to tyranny, or is there something more I'm missing here?
No, I think there are many ends when people get involved in violent activity, a revolutionary activity. And whether you can be a revolutionary, like these jihadis. The revolution for them was violence against America, with the hope of in attacking the banking center, which they saw the Twin Towers as representative of. By attacking them, they would be able to disrupt the banking. And of course, they had a great belief that America, of course, was run by a Jewish group, an elite Jewish group, and that was part of their hope, was to take down the influence of that Jewish group by attacking the center of their activity in the Twin Towers. So that was part of it. But any attack on a homeland is going to be very disruptive. They know that, and psychologically, it prepares people to change their thinking. And you know that. That's part
right.
of psychological warfare. So what we know, once we know we've got movement in a direction, what happens next is very important. And, of course, what happened next for America? Well, we traded off liberty and freedom for safety and security. And we were warned about that by the Founding Fathers. Precisely,
yeah. Kind of a nice segue into this question. Roger wants to know about the fate. Now we talked about this early on in the program, but he's asking a specific question about the dollar, the U.S. dollar, where you see, Dr. Garrow, the U.S. dollar. Are we looking at a U.S. dollar collapse? And if so, will it be soon? That from Roger.
Well, I don't know if you've been tracking the currency just in the last few months, but there's been an appreciable strengthening of the American dollar. And, of course, it's based on air. But, for example, let's look at the Canadian dollar versus the American dollar. 6 months ago, it was trading at about $1.04, $1.05. To Canadians would have to pay $1.04 of their money to buy an American dollar. Now it's costing them $1.11 or $1.12. Now, where did that diminishment of the Canadian dollar come from, or where did that rise in the valuation of the American dollar come from? What's that based on? And like I said, I believe it's air. There's nothing of real substance there. So there is manipulation right now of the valuation of the American dollar in the international currency market. Now, who's doing it and to what end? I always think George Soros, because we've seen him take down 2 national economies and hurt their currency so that he could make billions and billions of dollars in a heartbeat. So when I see this kind of movement that's based on nothing but air, I suggest that we're headed for a collapse, and guess who's going to make money on it? The guy who bets against the dollar.
Right, and the way it was explained to me, Roger and folks, and Dr. Garrow, is this, that they'll pump up the dollar to make it attractive for investors to come in, tank it, and of course, it'd be like, loading up the Titanic. It's all glittery and nice and beautiful, and of course they send the ship out and it sinks, and that's kind of, and of course money is made when that does happen. Certain people make money when this happens, so that's kind of how it was explained to me. And it's interesting because Alphonse, I'll ask this now because this kind of relates to what we're talking about here. the German delivery, the American delivery to Germany of their gold. Obviously, we're seeing where there's gold manipulation or manipulation of gold. Based on your knowledge, inside knowledge, do we have any gold in this country, or are Fort Knox or vaults, or is it air? Is it, what's in there?
Well, that's there are implications in that. Okay, let's suppose for a moment that there's no gold there in Fort Knox. And by the way, in the cubicles that have been assigned to American gold, because there are other countries have cubicles there. They're big. I mean, that's the big cages with gold bars in them, and you can actually see them. But let's suppose that there is nothing in the American sector, in the many levels below the ground. There's nothing there. Now, what does that really mean? Does that mean that we have taken the gold that was there and we've paid off debt? Or have we given that gold to someone else who's loaned us money and given the gold as surety, to make sure that we do, in fact, repay our indebtedness? Those two scenarios aren't bad. They really aren't bad. Or is it the worst case, which would be that we've spent the gold, we've used the gold, and the air that's sitting there is all we've got that is backing the dollar, plus our natural resources, which are pledged to China and other countries. Well, China's got the big deal right now. They've got the best of the deals. If there's no gold and it's been spent, we're in deep doo-doo, because the Chinese just took tons of gold, transferred from Knox to the Bank of Hawaii, and loaded onto those two destroyers, because that's what they were there for. This wasn't a war game. They were there to pick up their gold, and they took their gold. They didn't take it back to China, by the way. I happen to know that. It's gone to an intermediary spot. That's an interesting fact as well, that they didn't take it back.
Okay. That brings up some questions. Can you speak on that, or is that as much as you can say?
No, I know where it's gone, but I can't speak to that. But
okay.
It's an interesting thing that they would do that. As you know, it's an interesting thing to observe, and raises many questions as to why they would do that.
Yeah, I've got several questions about why they would indeed do that, but okay. That I didn't expect to hear that from you. Jim from Arkansas, Lance from Kentucky, Rita from South Dakota, and Carrie from Tennessee. Getting to your questions now. Thank you very much for your emails. Very interesting questions. Before we get to those, I've got a question myself, and I can't remember if I asked you this or not. And folks, you may have heard me speak about this early or at some point in the past. In 1968, in the spring of 1968, there was a K-129 Russian nuclear submarine that went down east of the Hawaiian Islands, I believe it was, or outside the Hawaiian Islands. It sunk in the Pacific, and again, a nuclear submarine, nuclear missiles on the submarine, and of course, as a result, the United States launched the Glomar Explorer, the Glomar Expedition. But one thing I want to ask you about is the information I had was this Russian submarine went down because a nuclear missile, was going to be launched to take against Hawaii. Okay, now the plan, as it was to create a nuclear situation, and blame it on China. Now, this is an oversimplification, but I've got it on good authority. And folks, you can look this up. You can look up K-129 Japanese or Russian submarine and Glomar expedition, and you'll find the backstory behind this. But for the sake of expediency and to be concise, Dr. Garrow, any knowledge on that? Any firsthand knowledge? Because I know you've been in the intelligence world for a long time. You heard that? Anything?
Well, actually, I'd have to say that I've only heard rumor. I've never seen a file. So I don't know about that. I've only heard rumors within our group, but I've never actually read anything on a file. Nothing.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. We'll go with Lance from Kentucky wants to know your thoughts on what's taking place on John Kerry and the Middle East situation. Without getting into a lot of specifics, how do you see this playing out? Do you see some sort of two-state solution taking place?
John Kerry, I don't know. Has that guy ever played cards? Like, does he actually?
Birch?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. I don't know. Talk about stupidity in my mind. You don't lay a threat out the way he has, and expect it to have the kind of what positive comes out of a threat? Not a lot, not usually. And in the Middle East, Iran or Iraq or any of those countries there, you lay out a threat. You can be sure that on the little blackboard they're writing down when they would like to get back at you for having done that. And you forget about cooperation. Threats are not the basis for good cooperation. And keep this in mind. Here. Let me give you an old Scottish, Robert Burns. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Now think about it. Old Scottish wisdom. You're not going to convince someone against their will to go along with you. They're still of the same opinion they already held. Yeah, there's a no-win.
Okay. All right. Carrie from Tennessee, we'll go to your question here. Carrie wants to know what information you might have today or currently concerning the deaths of the bankers. I know we addressed this initially at the beginning of the program, but in kind of to wrap this up, are these assassinations, or are these people just saying, okay, it's over, or is it a combination of both, or and what does this portend for the future of our the banking industry?
I'm going to say that every one of those deaths were elicited by others.
Wow. Okay. And that speaks a lot. That's the same information I'm getting, by the way, from various sources. Interesting. All right. Okay. And let's see. I answered your question. Rita wants to know any information or any movement, any type of closure, and I hate to use that word, but closure or judicial involvement on Benghazi. That's a tough one. I know that's a tough one.
Yeah, we need an independent panel to investigate it, and with the power to subpoena, but also the power to cause the judiciary to move, because there's been some violation of I'm wondering if you can call it law, but there is an expectation. For example, there's almost a contract between the Army, let's say. Let's just use the Army. There's a contract between the Army and an officer or an individual who is acting in a position of private, corporal, whatever it might be, that you will do everything you can to safeguard that person. There's I'm not sure if it's a written contract or unwritten, but there's an expectation that would be the case. And Benghazi is a total violation of that.
Right.
I mean, we're not just talking no man left behind here. We're talking far more than that. I would call it desertion, dereliction of duty. Someone's got to pay a price for that, and we need to know, who passed. We know that Valerie Jarrett gave the stand down order. We know that. Now, what's the responsibility of the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, in it? Because she was part of the mix. And then what about the president himself, who was busy having a little dalliance in the White House?
Speaking of that, yeah, let's talk on that. Do you know with precision or with a degree of accuracy exactly what Obama was doing during that time period? You know what I'm getting at.
The Secret Service knows exactly what he was doing. And, of course, you know that not everyone in the Secret Service is silent.
Okay, but do you know, in other words, the information, okay, I'll just flat out say it, the information I've got is he was with a male visitor, and it wasn't Reggie Love, but it was somebody who is a regular visitor at the residence there, for reasons that one can only speculate, or one can let your imagination run wild. Is that what you've been hearing, or what you've heard?
I know of a pattern of behavior that fits what you've described.
Okay. All right. We've had Larry Sinclair on our program. Larry Sinclair, of course, I don't know whether you know, I'm sure you've heard the name. And he really, Jim, I'll tell you, he gives a pretty very convincing account of Obama's behavior pre-presidential behavior, and it seems to fit with what I hear is taking place in the White House right now. So I don't know if you have any comments on that, but
well, he earned the name Bathhouse Barry.
Yeah, that's
earned it.
Well, and that makes me think too, and I've gotten a lot of emails on this. Is it possible? I mean, you look at Obama, and that everything that surrounds him is this enigma. He's so protected. Is it possible that he's a subject of blackmail? I mean, by multiple people, multiple groups, multiple.
Well,
sources.
You can blackmail people without that necessary element of I'm going to expose you, or I'm going to hurt you, or I'm going to kill you, or whatever. There are other methods. There are other ways, psychological methods of control. I believe that he is very much like Rasputin with the royal family of Russia, Tsar Nicholas II. That he has somebody who has an inordinate amount of influence on him to a deeply psychological level, which speaks to his own insecurity as a deserted child. And you get into the psychology of this man, and you're dealing with a pretty sick guy. So for him to be in a position where he could be manipulated, I would say yes to that. That he has in fact fallen into the manipulation of someone else. Valerie Jarrett's one of them. There are two others, though, who are involved, and we have to look pretty closely at that. And by the way, Michelle Obama is nowhere near the control element in his life. She is not.
That brings me to a couple of questions about Michelle Obama, who she really is, and I've seen some pretty radical, out there kind of descriptions. What's the mystique surrounding her that you've heard or that you're aware of? Because there's something not right with this whole. I just have not a bad feeling, but a very uneasy feeling when I look at Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. But specifically Michelle Obama, there's just something not right there.
Well, there's an absence of the word grace.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's something that America has the right to expect in its first lady, that there be an element of grace or graciousness. And I think we've been spoiled. We've had grandmother. We've had Barbara Bush. I mean,
right.
And she fit the role quite well, although she could be quite, caustic at times. But she was unafraid to speak her mind, which is, it goes with the territory of being who she is and coming from the family that she comes from. But we've had Mrs. Kennedy, who was style and grace, and we were kind of spoiled in that. The other Mrs. Bush, Laura Bush, believe it or not, was was a wonderful representation of what a first lady should be. You just need to ask. Like, don't listen to any one of the pundits on the street. Ask the guys who work in the White House with them. Ask the guys who are in protective detail. Would you take a bullet for him? You're expected to. Would you do it? Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the answer from those guys. With George Bush, with Laura Bush, they take the bullet. Was it a pleasure to work in the White House under the Bushes? The answer is absolutely yes. It was a pleasant atmosphere. You felt that you were respected. You felt that you were loved. You were part of the family. That was the kind of atmosphere. You don't see that today. In fact, people, the bad things that are said outside of class, as it were, are quite something about the Obamas. And it's often a reference that has to do with, the Jeffersons or the Beverly Hills. Somewhere between those two, you've got the middle ground where they think that the Obamas really are, because once again, graciousness, a temperament. There is, people who have had wealth over a long period of time, many generations. They handle wealth in a certain way, and they handle the status in a certain way. And of course, the nouveau riche are always the problem. And of course, they fall. The Obamas fall within that label of nouveau riche and the problems that go along with that.
Well said. And well described, very well described. Jim, we've got about 10 minutes left. I've got probably 40 different questions here from a number of people. I'll just throw these out kind of in a lightning round fashion. Mary L. from Seattle she says the gold was confiscated back in the 30s under FDR. And, of course, we have economic experts continually advising people here in the States and anywhere with a fiat currency to purchase gold. Her question is, what's to prevent the government or even the United Nations from requiring everyone to turn in their gold at the threat of penalty or fines or imprisonment and so on?
Okay, they can ask for it, but enforcing it's another thing. Here's another thing, because someone's going to ask this, may as well throw it out there. Get your money out of America if you can. And ask okay. Chris Street that question. The economist, Chris
yes.
Street? Yeah,
yes.
Well, I've had lots of people calling me, emailing me every single day. Where would you suggest we put our money? And of course, Canada's a good safe haven for it and close by. It's easy access. But, get it get it into Canada. Go for Canada. But get your stuff out of IRAs and special savings accounts for retirement. Get them out.
Very good, and that's a practical bit of advice too. It's self-preservation. And speaking of self-preservation, CS, I'll just address this here because I think this is a good way to kind of close things out. CS writes, thanks for taking the time in your interview with Mr. Garrow for the topic of solutions. More, please. Now, having said that, I'll just ask you this. Dr. Garrow, what are you doing to prepare? What are you doing for the solutions?
Okay, I'll give you a quick rundown.
Go ahead.
Let me give you the rundown. First of all, if you don't have a gun, get one. Get many, okay? Bottom line, get them. If you're adverse to guns, get over it because you're going to need them. Second, make sure you get lots of ammo. Go to your local gun store. They will put you in touch with tons of people who will help you through whatever you need. The other thing is, start paying attention to these guys. I think they called them preppers, because before January of last year, I didn't, I thought they were nutcases. I thought these people, out there playing war games and all this kind of stuff, or, hiding in the mountains, or, stocking up food for a year. I thought these people were in some cults. Well, no, I no longer think that way. Read what they've got to say and buy the stuff that they tell you to buy. And then join a militia. And I mean it. Join a militia. And when you get in the militia, the group, find out if they've got a neighborhood watch kind of a system where they will actually help you if you're under attack by the police or the military who come in. And always remember, it's overwhelming force. that they will attempt to use on you. And the only answer to overwhelming force is overwhelming force. So you need to have that with a militia. I never, honestly, a year ago, I would never have stated these kinds of things. But today, you ask me what I'm doing, all of the above. Have a bug-out bag. Be within 15 minutes of the ability to clear out. Have a year of food stashed somewhere. Make sure you're more than 4 hours drive away from a major center. If you're going to a bug-out place, because once everything goes down, if it's an EMP, you'll need to have that spread of distance to survive. Otherwise, of course, the mass of people who are left after the major slaughter in a big city, because those people won't survive. But the ones that do manage to get out, they're going to be the smart ones, the ones to watch out for. You want to be far enough away that it'll take them months to get to you. I also have a plane. I have a plane ready to roll too. Lands on water.
Wow. Okay, so you are prepared. I'll ask this: how many seats in the plane, and you want to pick us up? No, but so what you're saying is, and I mean, this is stuff that we talk about all the time. But it's interesting that you point out a year ago you wouldn't be talking this way. Now you are. My question to you is, knowing what you knew a year ago versus now, what changed your mind?
Well, the EMP attack on America that was thwarted by those three guys, by the two generals and the admiral. That was an extinction event for American civilization. 90% of America, had Obama been successful in doing it, 90% of Americans would have died within 2 years. So that changed my mind. Huge. That's when I really got into, I had owned airplanes before. I went and bought another one. I swore I wasn't going to buy another one. But now I knew that I would need, this 15-minute clock. I can be wheels up from my house with my, 4 seats filled. I can be wheels up in 15 minutes, and that's important. Plus, I now have Faraday caging. You wouldn't believe what I've done. And the amount of money I've spent. I'm going to survive no matter what.
And Faraday cage, and folks, by the way, if you want to know, if you're just hearing about this EMP event for the first time, go back and listen to the January 1st, 2014 episode with Dr. Garrow. He explains that on our program. This brings me to another question here as well for myself. Are there other nukes out there that are missing, unaccounted for, that are just in play, shall we say?
Yes, there are 2 that I'm aware of, 2. And that's the other 2 that one was detonated off the southeast coast of, Charleston, South Carolina, 560 miles into the deep ocean. So the other 2 are still out there. And, of course, the people who were in charge of those have been let go. They're no longer in the military. But those 2 are still floating out there, and I believe they're safeguarded. And it's for our advantage, by the way. This is not stuff that's going to be used against we the people. This is a check and a balance against the man in the White House. And I'm going to say the madman in the White House for having dared to even think to wipe out the population mass that he was willing to see to.
I don't think I asked you this, or we asked you this on the first. Where was that scheduled detonation to take place? Not that maybe it doesn't matter, but you're talking about an airburst and.
Yeah, there were going to be high atmosphere, and they're going to rely on the Compton effect, the multiplier effect for the EMP, plus the sun. And if you remember, the sun polarity stalled. It didn't flip as per normal. Never happened before, but it stalled. The north flipped, and the south fizzled, and then eventually it did switch, but it was weeks later. Never happened before. And that was, to my mind, that was a God intervention.
And again, now this is something I don't think I asked you before, because I was kind of taken aback by what you had said. What was the magic, or what was the thought process behind the timing? Why then to do such a thing, to detonate an EMP?
Well, it had to do with the sun, I believe. Plus, there were other events happening. Putin had something to do with it too. There's some other information out there that would scare you, actually. But actually, Mr. Putin's the one who actually lent veracity to what we said. He actually said that what we had reported was actual fact. So it was nice to have that.
Is that anywhere open source, the verification by Putin, or is that privy to
I think
individuals?
It's out there. I think it's recorded somewhere. I've never gone looking. I haven't had a need to.
Wow. And to think about that, the Obama himself, in conjunction, it would have to be in conjunction with Valerie Jarrett and others. Wouldn't they have to? I mean, they'd have to clear out of the White House because of the situation. Primarily, would they go to Denver, or could they function at the White House in Washington, given such an event?
Well, he had built an extensive bunker system well below the White House level. With it's all Faraday caged, it's all ready for survival if he needed to stay there. And plus, there's the little subway system they put in that gets him out to the airport. There's no need for him to have to go traveling in a vehicle.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Wow. This is incredible stuff. Really, it is. Folks, we have been graced by Dr. Garrow's presence, Dr. Jim Garrow. Dr. Garrow, go ahead and give out your contact information, your Facebook information, and your website again, please.
Facebook, it's Jim Garrow, Garrow, or Dr. Jim Garrow, and www.pinkpagodagirls.com, and that'll tell you about my philanthropic work. And I wrote a book, actually, called The Pink Pagoda, One Man's Quest to End Gendercide in China. And again, that speaks to the issue of the one-child policy and saving baby girls from being murdered.
Yes, and you've done a fantastic job with that. Is that accessible via Amazon or on Amazon or through your website?
Amazon. Yeah, I would go to Amazon, yeah.
Okay, super. Dr. Garrow, we're at the end of the program already. I just can't believe how quickly it has gone by. I just want to say thank you so very much for your graciousness, for your time tonight. It was very interesting, very informative. In the last 30 seconds, any closing comments, any closing thoughts that you want to leave with?
Well, do you know what? There's great hope for America because